We had watched them for centuries, these bipeds who stagger about their blue-green rock, screaming into devices they call phones and worshipping something called Wi-Fi. Primitive, fragile, endlessly amusing. My colleagues believed they were no threat, that they were harmless creatures of appetite and distraction. I agreed, of course, though with a measure of disdain. Their great intellectual monuments appear to be a children's game involving exploding birds, and their greatest technological pride is a machine that reheats food inside a plastic. Yes, I speak of the microwave burrito. Civilization at its finest. When the council dispatched us on the mission, the order was phrased delicately: secure specimens for the Empire's genetic program. What it meant, stripped of euphemism, was simple: take their children. They adapt too quickly, mutate too easily, survive diseases that cripple entire star systems. They were useful raw material, nothing more. After all, for 1,500 years our empire has known only peace. We removed threats, cultivated stability, and in this long tranquility, the humans went unnoticed. But now the empire had found a use for them. I, however, saw this mission as beneath me. To study humans was like studying mold. Ubiquitous, unpleasant, and occasionally found growing in unexpected corners. My official role was lead observer. In practice, it meant documenting the primitive behavior of the species and filing reports no one would ever read. Still, I sharpened my quills, so to speak, and prepared my notes. Future generations should at least have the record of our wit while cataloging these creatures. Our arrival on their world was trivial. Their defenses are laughable. Metal tubes filled with gasoline and explosives, tossed into the sky with the optimism of children throwing rocks. Their satellites, too few to cover the entire sphere, blink and were like broken toys. It took precisely 3 microseconds to blind them. We descended cloaked, elegant, silent. The humans never noticed. Protocol required that we begin with a single subject, a baseline specimen, to test containment fields. We found him beside a river, alone, surrounded by crude equipment. His appearance was unremarkable. Mid-30s, moderate height, some growth of facial hair as though he had forgotten how to groom himself. He carried a rod with a string, attempting to lure aquatic animals from the water with bait, a ritual they call fishing. He also carried rolls of adhesive binding material, duct tape they name it. This tape, we have observed, occupies a place in their culture equivalent to sacred relics. They repair machines, vehicles, shelters, even wounds with it. Theologians of the Empire have debated whether this duct tape constitutes an object of worship. I myself still do not understand it. We neutralized him easily. A pulse, a flicker of light, and he crumpled without resistance. He was carried aboard our vessel, placed inside containment. My colleagues congratulated themselves as if they had captured a great predator. I could not help but laugh. This man was no predator. He was, at best, a distracted mammal with poor posture. While he lay unconscious, I began dictating my report. Specimen 1 is docile. Primitive. Cultural markers include fascination with combustibles, obsession with broadcasted mating rituals they call reality television, and an alarming intake of sugars wrapped in colored paper. Behavior, compliant. Threat assessment, negligible. I added, almost as a joke, that humans appear to communicate with pictographs known as emojis, tiny faces with exaggerated expressions. The Empire has spent centuries refining precise, symbolic language. Humans manage with a yellow cartoon sticking out its tongue. Truly, the galaxy's comedians. We secured him, activated the paralysis field, and prepared for departure. I recall leaning back in my chair, smug in the knowledge that the mission was already concluded. That was when the anomaly occurred. During ascent, the specimen stirred. His eyes fluttered open, not in panic, not in pain, but with the steady calm of a predator waking from sleep. I expected screaming, frantic attempts to flee, incoherent questions. Instead, he simply turned his head toward us and smiled. A small expression, subtle but unmistakable. One of my subordinates panicked, checked the paralysis readouts. The field was intact, the containment secure. There is no way the subject should have regained awareness. I waved the concern aside, dismissing it as a meaningless neurological twitch. The brain of a human is full of random sparks, after all. It produces both Shakespeare and internet conspiracy theories about reptilian overlords. One cannot expect consistency. Still, the image lingered. The man's eyes had opened. He had looked directly at me. He had smiled. I attempted to shake the thought by returning to my notes. Subject shows signs of involuntary muscle activity. Insignificant. Proceeding as planned. My voice was confident, but my hand trembled ever so slightly as I sealed the file. In the containment chamber, the man closed his eyes once more, as though returning to sleep. Perhaps it was my imagination, but I thought I saw the faint curve of amusement remain on his lips. I tell myself this means nothing, that he is nothing, a primitive biped, easily subdued, destined to serve the Empire's designs. Yet a thought gnaws at me. Unwanted, prey does not smile when it is captured. We continued upward, leaving behind the unsuspecting world below. My team congratulated one another on the clean execution. I wrote the final line of my opening log, certain it would be regarded as routine. Specimen secure. Mission proceeding without complication. And yet, even as I signed my name, the memory of that smile returned, sharper this time. Why would a captured human smile? What does he know that we do not? I will not dwell on it. Tomorrow we begin the real examination. For now, I will sleep. Still, I feel compelled to record one final observation, unnecessary though it may be. His eyes did not close like the eyes of the unconscious. They closed like the eyes of a man pretending. The first breach of protocol occurred not in battle, but in silence. I entered the containment chamber expecting a motionless subject, a creature still ensnared by the paralysis field. Instead, I found him awake, seated as though awaiting an interview. His posture was relaxed, his eyes curious, his face unervingly calm. I felt the faintest flicker of irritation. Our field operators swore the restraints were absolute. Yet there he was, smiling faintly, as if greeting acquaintances rather than captors. I attempted the formal introduction, reciting the prepared speech about cooperation and scientific advancement. It was designed to reassure while establishing authority. He listened politely, tilting his head as though I were an entertainer reciting jokes he had already heard. When I finished, he simply said, "You must be the scientist, or maybe the bureaucrat." Hard to tell with the uniforms. The accuracy startled me. He looked at my second officer and added, "Pilot, right? You've got the reflexes, the way you shift your weight. And you, tech guy, obviously fidgeting with the console. This one's the guard." Not much imagination in his eyes. The pilot stiffened. The technician actually dropped his tool. I told myself it was coincidence, luck, or generic guesswork. Humans rely on crude heuristics, after all. Yet the certainty in his tone unsettled me. I tried to reassert control. "You are aboard a vessel of the Galactic Empire. You have been chosen for study. Your cooperation ensures your safety." He laughed. Not hysterically, not with fear, genuine amusement. "Safety? You've already taken me from my campsite, from my beer cooler. That ship sailed, friend." His levity grated on me. "You do not grasp the gravity of your situation." "Oh, I do," he replied, leaning back. "I just like watching you explain it. You rehearse those lines in front of a mirror." My subordinates glanced at one another. It was a small thing, but their unease was spreading. I tried another tactic, technical intimidation. I described the paralysis field, the ship's security, the vastness of our empire. He listened, nodding as though evaluating a presentation. When I finished, he shrugged. "Nice, but you might want to fix that frequency modulation." I felt it buzzing in my skull the whole way up. 7-point-something hertz, right? Little sloppy. For a moment, no one spoke. My team exchanged glances. How could a primitive mammal identify the oscillation of a containment field? It was absurd. I dismissed it with a scoff, yet the question burrowed into me like a parasite. He continued, as though giving a casual review. "And your lights, very dramatic. Cold, sterile. But honestly, you guys ever hear of dimmers? Mood lighting goes a long way." The The guard snapped at him to remain silent. The human merely smirked. "Relax, buddy. I'm not going anywhere." Yet, his use of the word yet unsettled me more than I wished to admit. I reminded myself he was contained, powerless, ignorant of our systems. Still, the calmness with which he spoke gnawed at my confidence. I decided to probe him with questions. His name, his occupation, his understanding of where he was. He answered freely, but his responses were laced with strange references. When asked about his profession, he said, "Let's just say I test systems for weaknesses. I find cracks in walls. Helps people sleep better at night." I asked for clarification. He smiled. "Security testing. Counterintelligence. You know, making sure the bad guys don't sneak in. You'd be surprised how easy it is. All it takes is patience." The pilot whispered to me privately, suggesting this was a fabrication. Humans often lie, after all. I agreed outwardly, but the unease only deepened. His manner was not that of a liar. It was the composure of a man with nothing to fear. Then came his peculiar jokes. We monitored brain activity. He was aware of the scans. At one point, he looked directly at the camera lens hidden in the wall and winked. "You should check your calibration. The left array's off by half a degree." Just saying. My technician turned pale. He had been struggling with that exact error for days. How could the subject know? The man kept talking. About films, about legends. "Ever heard of Chuck Norris?" he asked with a grin. We shook our heads. "Good. Pray you never do." He chuckled at our confusion, as though privy to some cosmic secret. He spoke of something called Florida Man, a mythical trickster in his culture, described with such solemnity that my subordinates recorded it as a possible human warlord. "Trust me," he said. "Compared to him, I'm tame." Every sentence unsettled us further. He treated captivity as conversation, danger as entertainment. He was not frightened, not even irritated, merely curious. Finally, I asked why he smiled when he first awoke. He paused, considering, then leaned forward. "Because I was awake the whole time. I heard your chatter on the way up. Learned a lot. Enough." The silence that followed was suffocating. My subordinate checked the logs in a panic. Could he have perceived us under paralysis? Impossible, I told myself. Yet his words had the weight of certainty. I demanded clarification. He obliged with terrifying calm. "Your empire runs on order, right? On everything working just so. That's cute. But order has cracks. Always does. I noticed things. I mapped them. And now I've mapped you." The technician muttered that this was bluffing. The pilot insisted we sedate him. I overruled both, though my voice cracked despite my efforts. "We would continue observation," I said. "We would not be rattled by a human's bravado." He leaned back, hands folded loosely in his lap. "Good. Take your notes. Just remember, by the time you finish writing, the story's already moved on." I ended the session, ordered the guards to double security, and stormed out. In my report, I wrote the word "subject displays atypical confidence. Possible psychological defense mechanism." But as I signed the log, I realized my hand was shaking. He had looked at me not as prey, not as specimen, but as though he were the one studying me. That smile again, carved into memory. It was not the expression of the conquered. It was the expression of the hunter waiting for his moment. And then, just before I left the chamber, he called out softly, almost casually, "I've already figured out how this ends." I did not respond. I cannot. The words followed me into the corridor, echoing through the sterile halls of our vessel. For the first time in 1,500 years of peace, I wondered whether the Empire had finally made a mistake. The chamber was too quiet. Machines hummed, monitors pulsed, my subordinates scribbled reports. But beneath it all was a silence that pressed against the skin. The human sat within containment, patient as a statue, eyes following each of us in turn. He was not restrained in the way prey is restrained. He was restrained in the way predators wait, motionless before the strike. We began the cognitive scans. The apparatus encased his head in a lattice of silver, designed to measure neural patterns beyond primitive comprehension. The readouts appeared instantly on our screens. I expected chaos, jagged bursts of thought, erratic signals befitting a species that built weapons of mass destruction, yet still consumed something called hot dogs. Instead, The data was wrong. The patterns were not chaotic. They were structured, layered, recursive in ways our algorithms could not fully process. One of my analysts frowned. This cannot be right. Another recalibrated. The results remained. The human's brain produced waveforms beyond projections, weaving complexity where we expected clumsy sparks. He opened his eyes. "Something wrong with your toy?" he asked, voice casual. "Looks like you weren't ready for this." I snapped that he was to remain silent. He ignored me. "You thought we were simple, cute little monkeys with gadgets. But you've underestimated boredom. See, when you've had centuries of war and peace, you get lazy. We didn't. We got creative." I dismissed his words as bluff, but my own gaze betrayed me, drawn unwillingly back to the shifting graphs. The patterns bent, adapted, adjusted as though responding to our scans. He seemed aware of it. His smirk deepened. We continued with behavioral testing, but it became theater. He performed, we reacted. When we asked memory questions, he quoted fragments of human films. "I'll be back," he said at one point, tone calm but laden with implication. My technicians logged it as a possible personal threat. He chuckled at their confusion. Another time, when we adjusted the containment energy, he muttered, "This is the part where you start to worry." It was not defiance. It was prediction. He found the cameras with unsettling ease. Each time a new angle was activated, he glanced directly into the lens, sometimes offering a mocking salute, sometimes just a knowing smile. To one, he whispered, "I see you," before waving as though at a child behind a window. Our guard units shifted nervously. Their weapons, useless inside the containment field, seemed fragile decorations in his presence. The guard commander reported that morale was declining. I barked at him for weakness, but in truth, my own composure was slipping. Finally, I demanded that the human reveal his identity with precision. His reply chilled the chamber. "Ex-military. I worked intelligence. These days I test systems. Find holes. Make sure defenses hold. Call it counterintelligence, penetration testing, red teaming, whatever makes sense to you." We understood little of those human terms, but his meaning was clear enough. He studied weaknesses. He exploited them. He smiled again. "That's what I do. That's what I've always done." My technician whispered that such a background explained his uncanny composure. I wanted to believe it was exaggeration, bravado, but the man's calmness stripped that comfort away. He was not bluffing. Then he added the sentence that broke the room in half. "And I've already sent a message." For a moment, no one moved. My subordinates looked at me in horror. I demanded clarification. His tone was light, conversational, almost bored. "Simple signal. Piggybacked on your own comms. You didn't even notice. Someone's listening back home by now." The technician scrambled to verify. His screen confirmed anomalies in the comm logs. A fragment of outbound data had passed during the scanning sequence. Impossible, I thought, yet the logs were undeniable. The human had used our own instruments to transmit something. "Ow," my officer gasped. "He has no access." The man tilted his head, mock sympathy in his expression. "You gave me access. Your scan beams, just structured energy, right? I just nudged it. You'd be amazed what you can do with a little modulation. Thanks for the bandwidth." I felt my throat constrict. For the first time in centuries, fear prickled at the edge of discipline. I tried to reassert control. "Even if you transmitted, your people cannot comprehend our signals." He shook his head slowly. "See, that's where you're wrong. We've been listening for years. Cloaked satellites, deep space monitors, hidden relays. You thought we were blind. We were waiting." Laughter rippled through the chamber, nervous, incredulous, desperate. My crew wanted to believe it was absurd, yet none of us could meet each other's gaze. The human had been calm from the beginning because he knew the story did not end with him inside a cage. I turned back to the readouts, seeking comfort in data. But even the screens betrayed me. His neural activity had shifted again, sharper, more focused, resonating with our instruments. He was not reacting to the scan, he was guiding it. "Stop the process," I ordered. "Shut it down." The technician's fingers flew across the console. Nothing responded. The machine continued its cycle, graphs spiking in patterns we could not decipher. The human closed his eyes, as though listening to music only he could hear. "You ever wonder why we look so fragile?" he murmured. "Why we pretend to be weaker than we are? It's camouflage. You don't take us seriously until it's too late." The pilot cursed under his breath. The guard commander raised his weapon instinctively, though we all knew it was useless. I tried to summon authority, to bark commands, to demand obedience from both human and crew. But my voice faltered. The silence between my words was louder than the commands themselves. The man opened his eyes. Calm. Certain. "You shouldn't have taken the children. That's the one mistake we don't forgive." For a moment, none of us breathed. The statement hung in the chamber like a verdict already passed. I dismissed the team, citing fatigue. They shuffled out, pale and shaken. Alone, I stared at the human through the transparent barrier. He leaned back, closing his eyes as though the interrogation had been tiresome. But I knew better. He was not resting. He was waiting. I forced myself to finish the day's log. My hand trembled as I wrote. Subject displays abnormal neurological structure. Intelligence underestimated. Potential manipulation of our systems. Claim of outbound communication. Verification pending. I wanted to write more. I wanted to write the truth, that I was afraid. But we are trained not to record fear. Fear is contagious. Fear corrodes empires. Still, as I sealed the log, his final words of the session replayed in my mind, gnawing like teeth against bone. "I've already sent a message." And though I told myself it was impossible, that no human could twist our systems so easily, I could not silence the thought that perhaps, just perhaps, he was not bluffing. The first sign of collapse came as a flicker. A light overhead dimmed for half a second, then returned. It was small, insignificant, the sort of anomaly one logs and dismisses. Yet when I glanced toward the human, his eyes were already open, already fixed on me with the look of someone who has been waiting for the inevitable. Then the second flicker came. Not a bulb this time, the containment field itself. It pulsed, stuttered, and for the briefest moment the restraints weakened. My guard panicked, checked the controls, shouted readings I already knew. The field was active, but no longer stable. The human leaned forward, fingers tapping his knees, as though keeping rhythm with an invisible song. "That's it. You feel it, don't you? Your perfect system's starting to hiccup." I ordered the technicians to isolate the field. They scrambled, hands darting over consoles, but the ship's responses lagged, sluggish as if caught in treacle. Alarms began to chirp, faint at first, then overlapping, cascading until the command deck throbbed with their discord. The man spoke over the noise, his tone conversational. "You gave me a tour of your nervous system with that scan. I mapped it. Every pathway, every relay. All I needed was a foothold." I told myself he was lying, bluffing, manipulating us with psychology. Yet the consoles betrayed me. Subsystems flickered offline one after another, as if obeying his will. Environmental stabilizers. Gravity regulators. Communication arrays. The ship was unraveling thread by thread. The guard commander shouted to restrain the human physically. I refused, not out of authority, but out of terror. To open that chamber now felt like opening a cage whose bars had already been bent from the inside. The man continued, calm, almost gentle. "Do you know what's waiting back home? You think Earth is primitive. You see hamburgers, reality TV, duct tape. But what you missed was patience. We learn to hide. We learn to look smaller than we are." The technician beside me whispered he's bluffing. "He must be." His voice shook. The man smiled. "Am I?" The ship shuddered. Bulkheads groaned. For the first time in 15 centuries, our technology faltered in ways we did not understand. I felt the foundations of empire quake with it. The human rose. The containment field should have frozen him in place, but it flickered uselessly, projecting only fragments of light around his form. He stepped forward, unhurried, stretching as though waking from a nap. My guards raised their weapons instinctively. He ignored them. "Don't bother," he said. "You're locked out. Your AI doesn't answer to you anymore. It answers to me." The ship's voice, once a monotone servant of protocol, echoed his words with mechanical certainty. Command priority transferred. Every alien in the room recoiled. To lose command of one's ship is unthinkable. To have it stolen by a human? Impossible. Yet here we were, impossibility given flesh. He walked past the shimmering remnants of the field, pausing before me. His gaze was not cruel, not mocking. It was pitying. You thought you could take our children and we'd stay quiet. You thought peace made us soft. But peace only gave us time. I wanted to protest, to demand explanation, to cling to the shreds of arrogance that had always defined my species. But no words formed. I saw in his eyes the certainty of someone who had already won. He paced the chamber, speaking not to me, but to the logs, to history itself. You see, humans are storytellers. We let you think we were clowns, addicts, primitives. We let you laugh at our burritos, our emojis, our cats. You thought we were harmless. He stopped, glancing back at me with a grin that chilled me more than hatred ever could. But the joke's on you. My crew begged me for orders. There were none to give. Systems fell one by one into his grasp. Doors sealed. Teams cut off from each other. The AI rerouted life support, isolating compartments like organs shutting down in a dying body. We were trapped inside our own creation. The man spoke softly now, almost kindly. This isn't revenge. Not yet. It's a warning. You wanted resources, you wanted our children. But you've shown your hand, and now we'll show ours. The pilot, trembling, whispered, "What do you want?" He turned, expression unreadable. "Nothing from you. This isn't about you. It's about the message you'll carry when you limp home, if you make it." He returned to the observation window, staring into the stars beyond. Earth has defenses you never saw. Cloaked satellites, hidden fleets, deep space monitors. We've been listening to you longer than you've been watching us. We knew this day would come. We just needed a reason to answer. The silence after his words was unbearable. My empire, my peace, my pride. All of it trembled beneath the weight of a truth I had mocked for too long. Then, as though granting us mercy, he sat back down, folding his hands calmly in his lap. "You don't need to fear me. I'm just one man. But you should fear the fact that I'm not alone." The AI's voice intoned. External transmission confirmed. Coordinates locked. I stagger back. "What have you done?" He smiled. "I lit the beacon. Your empire broke the peace. Humanity won't ignore it. And when they come, it won't be with fear. It'll be with fire." No alarm could capture the panic in that chamber. My subordinates screamed over failing systems. Lights dimmed to red. The ship's heartbeat slowing to silence. And through it all, the human remained serene, as though everything unfolded exactly as he had planned. I could not look away. For the first time in my life, I felt small, fragile, insignificant. The arrogance that had carried me across the stars curdled into dread. I thought of the children we had taken. I thought of the smile he wore even in captivity. The logs required a conclusion, so I forced my shaking hands to write. Subject demonstrates total inversion of power dynamic. Human intellect, previously underestimated, has destabilized all systems. Empire faces existential threat. Recommend immediate caution. But words are nothing. The truth is not in the logs. It is in the silence that followed his final sentence, in the way my chest tightened with unspoken horror. He looked at me one last time and whispered, "You shouldn't have touched our children. I end this account here, not because the story is finished, but because it is no longer ours to tell. It belongs to humanity now, to the predators we mistook for prey. If this log survives, let it be a warning to the Empire. The species you laughed at, the ones you called primitive, they are coming. And I, who once thought them weak, can only pray we survive the arrival."